This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
You're about to listen to the Late Round Fantasy Football Show, which originally aired on YouTube. If you'd like to catch the show live this offseason, you can head to the Late Round Fantasy Football YouTube channel, youtube.com/@LateRoundFF. We'll be live each Wednesday at noon Eastern. Without further ado, here's this week's episode.
Welcome in. David Kitchen, COO of Late Round, with JJ, CEO of Late Round. And JJ, we're here.
We're here. We made it. That was a stressful time, even more stressful for you. But it was stressful, even just like awaiting the inevitable. Yeah. And it's one of those things, man, where we in Charlotte got really, really lucky because I guess the atmospheric temperature was just the right temperature for us to get sleet instead of ice. And so we got, the kid, my daughter's been out of school all week so far, but that's just the roads that are the problem. There wasn't that many power outages, nothing like that. Nashville, you guys were like, aside from like, Mississippi and such that got it really, really, really bad where, thoughts and prayers to all the folks down there. But Nashville was like the center of this in terms of like a major metropolitan area that got hit. It was really where you were at.
Yeah, still a bunch of people in Nashville without power. Myself, we were 32 hours without power. And
I don't know. I couldn't handle that.
Yeah, but the kids, they loved it. It was an adventure for them. It was kind of like glamping. I felt like I was the protector, the provider. There's a little bit of just that instinct that kicks in. So, we say we did it, and we also, in doing that, appreciate things we take for granted.
Yes.
Like heat.
Yeah, and right. Like not being in 45-degree weather all the time in your home. Yeah.
Right. And it just made me think, like, people say they want to go back to like the old days. Do you really do you think about do you really want to go back to the old days? Because
I mean, to me, peak living is probably, if we're being on, no, you know what? I'm not going to even say it.
You're going to say the 90s. I know.
Yeah, I was, but then I'm like, the internet is too important for my job and for me in my life that I can't just go back to that time. That I think anyone would just say, get me back to when I was a child, as long as you had a decent childhood.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad that we had a generator. We're here, and hopefully everyone out there is safe and warm. JJ, you've got some more snow coming up this weekend. We're just hoping.
I get to run it back this weekend, maybe. But the nice part is that the snow that we're forecasted to get, this weekend is just snow. It's not
super ice. Fluffy.
Yes, it's literally a normal snowstorm or nothing. And honestly,
14-1 ratio. I've already researched Charlotte's snow probabilities.
Yeah, you have?
Yeah, because usually it's 10-1. I figure, but this is it's going to be extra powdery.
Yeah,
it's a 14-1.
Yeah, it's like in almost any circumstance, I would be very excited for the kids and stuff. And I am to a degree, but I'm flying out on Monday to go to San Francisco for the Super Bowl. And now I'm like, we got a lot of content planned. We have a lot of just stuff planned in general. And I'm like, I don't want to be snowed in for that. So hopefully it's good enough that I can play with the kids this weekend. There's not even football on this weekend. So I can, it's even better to, go outside and just hang out with the family. But there is the fear of me not being able to fly out to California next week.
Yeah. Like I told you, we'll just take it day by day. Take it day by day.
I get anxious about that kind of thing.
I know. If you miss the first day, though, not a big deal. I promise I won't push the live button on the show. We'll just postpone it to the next day.
Oh man, yeah. We'll see, because we do have stuff planned for you guys.
We do have stuff planned for next week. I'm looking forward to it, hoping that everything works out. Just a reminder, though, we'll be posting some stuff. I'm sure on X, we'll be on here, but I'll be posting some behind the scenes stuff on our Patreon too for our members. So looking forward to that. JJ, we've had a bunch of coaching changes, and you're also in prospect mode.
Oh, I'm in full-blown prospect mode right now. Yes.
Right now. So take us to like how you're doing right now with like everything going on.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I have revamped the Zap models. I've revamped the year 2 ones definitely as well. There's a lot of cool stuff that's changed in the Zap models year over year. I do this every year where you get new testing data because there's another year that kind of gets thrown in there because another draft class has officially played 3 years in the NFL, which is what I'm testing against. And so I like to kind of just make sure that I'm, the NFL evolves and draft classes evolve and the archetype of player evolves. And I'm making sure that the model is capturing things properly. So I go in and I tweak the model both at running back and wide receiver every single year. And so I did that, at the beginning of January, worked on that. Some of the cool things that's changed. The big thing I'd say, the interpretation of the data is going to change on the consumer's end. You guys can see all of that within the guide. Like the scale of scoring is a little bit different than it's been over the last 4 years. But one of the big things that was really evident for me was when I was analyzing different areas of the draft. There are different metrics. So I've used prorated reception share, for instance, for running backs for years. And it's a really good signal when you layer on top draft capital and some of these other factors. But it's actually a way better signal for day 1 and day 2 picks, but not as much of one for day 3. Whereas day 3, something like yards per team play might get more signal than what you would get from an earlier round pick. And all of those things and doing that testing and working through it has gotten the model to be more predictive at both running back and wide receiver, than it was in the past. And that's my goal every year, is to make this thing better and better, because I'm sitting here analyzing new data, thinking about how I can calculate things a little bit differently. And it's this giant puzzle to kind of put together. And then eventually I have to stop. Eventually I have to be like, okay, I got other stuff I got to do. I can keep trying to get this thing to a great level. And hopefully it is at a great level, but even better, you can always make something better, but I have to stop at some point because there's so many other things to do. And then the year 2 model's gotten a little bit of a revamp as well, but all of that modeling is done now. It's more putting it all together in this prospect guide, which we will have pre-order sales out there, a link for you guys here shortly. And eventually we'll announce all of that. But yeah, man, I mean, there's that. There's the Super Bowl next week and us going out to San Francisco. Gadula is doing amazing.
Yeah.
The newsletter. Gadula sent out a newsletter today. Sorry, finished
today
it.
This morning. Yeah.
Yeah. On how coaching changes impact NFL offenses. And Kitchen's response, this is the COO in Kitchen. He responds and says, this should have been paywalled.
I said, it's so good. It feels like it needs to be paywalled.
But it's not going to be. That's not how we roll, Kitchen.
I know.
It's not how we roll.
It was a compliment as to how good.
Yeah.
It was just a free newsletter that people get when they sign up for
Gadula is really good at breaking things down and making it consumable. And, it's the stuff that we used to do at Numberfire all the time. And we're doing that in the newsletter now pretty consistently. I'm hoping to get one out tomorrow on sort of like an extension of the Death of the Wide Receiver 2 episode that I did, in the podcast feed last week, week and a half ago. There's some more stuff. I'm going to be talking to Matt Harmon later today on Reception Perception on that show. About some of that, but definitely subscribe is what I'm saying. lateround.com, click newsletter. It's free. Just give us your email address. I'm not saying that because we're just going to market to you all the time. I'm saying that because we're trying to push really good content to you guys in article form. And that's what I think Gadula has already shown to be a really good value add this month, with him starting at late round.
Yeah. Gadula adding value. I'm apparently taking away value because it's Senior Bowl going on right now.
Yes.
And I'm a Vandy fan. So
oh my gosh.
I stand for Diego Pavia. He comes in at 5'9" and 7/8. I made one post about his height related to Bryce Young and Kyler Murray, and I'm getting all sorts of responses, including one from the CEO of the company says this is not a late round.
Yeah, that's not a late round take. It's not a late round take. Isn't he kind of a turd too?
He's not a turd. when he's on your team.
Isn't that part of the?
No.
I mean, especially when you compare and contrast who the 101 of this draft is going to be to him.
Right.
It's like, my gosh, could you get polar opposite personalities?
There's that thin line between like confidence and arrogance, and sure, he walks the line over there. But
no, I think he's past the line, buddy.
But he's back to that. He's good for the team. If like he's not a diva when it comes to the team, he never puts himself like over the team. And if you watch him play, he never complains like on the field. I appreciate both of those. Now, if you want to criticize
pass judgment, I don't know the guy personally.
If you want to criticize the social media stuff, he might have like some sort of short QB complex. I don't know. But anyways, I'm enjoying the prospect stuff, and even just seeing you and Gadula talk about model stuff makes me excited for the guide, which will be available to pre-order in February. And with that, JJ, let's get on to today's news.
Today's fantasy news.
All right, we've got just talking about survival. We survived, so that's in the past. We were talking about that. Conference review, though, JJ. I got to watch on my phone.
Yeah, did you watch?
I watched most of it via shout out to YouTube TV and when I got service, but I was like charging up my phone so I could watch it. So I'm
that's what I was worried about. I said that I had my generator solely for electronics this past weekend, all ready to go.
So I did watch it, especially the second game. First game I was still kind of setting things up, but what was your general thought process on the games?
I mean, I thought they were both good games in terms of just like drama, and you had enough of that. I kind of I was kind of rooting for the Rams to get one more possession at the end of that game to just see what they could do, or at least longer possession in that game. I think that the NFC game was determined by the fact that Sam Darnold played probably the best game of his career, which was really, really cool to see. After the stuff that he's gone through from a career standpoint. That was really fun. And I think the story of the other game, unfortunately, the main story is weather, right? And how that game just kind of went to the crapper in the second half because neither team, and I love how I'm saying that after last week, I was very pro.
I asked you about the weather. Yeah. It did affect it. It just wasn't for me. It just wasn't as fun because like both teams were punting. Like,
it was ridiculous. The whole game. I mean, the Patriots just like did not even they didn't attempt a pass towards the end of that game in situations when you would have almost all day given Drake May. I think that and I tweeted about this, but the AFC was pretty weak this year, as we know, and no matter the path, no matter how it would have gone down, people would have complained about how things went down for New England because it's New England, and they've gone so many years without having success.
Poor guys.
Poor fan base. Poor fan base. But the one thing that I will say is that like it's not like New England is a bad in the end, right? Even if they had an easier path, or even whatever argument you want to make, in the end, it's hard to argue that there are many other teams in the AFC that would have been better representations of that conference this year. I think New England as a team is strong. I sent a tweet out that's gotten a lot of run that at least this team has Mike Vrabel and he's a lot more likable than Bill Belichick. And the majority of people are like very much in agreement because Mike Vrabel objectively from like a media perspective is in like what we see on TV and stuff, way more likable than Bill Belichick. I mean, like even the comments that he made when he was in Tennessee about what he would do to himself if he won a Super Bowl, that kind of stuff.
He's a player and he's a player's coach.
Right. He's a likable dude. And Drake May, I mean, I love Drake May for many reasons. So I'm very excited about that team itself. The fan base is spoiled, and anyone who says that we're jealous in the end.
It is funny though. It is funny.
It's crazy.
If you look at this right here, and I'm posting a graphic right now. This is funny. It's Wheaton Brando posted the Patriots schedule of who all they've faced, and it's just fired coach, NFC South, fired coach, NFC South, fired coach, NFC South, Jets, Bengals, fired coach, Jets, fired coach. Like that is hilarious. Objectively.
Yeah, and then they played,
some
Jarrett
top 5
Stidham
defenses
in the AFC Championship. But here's my overall thing though, is that like you can still judge a team's performance and adjust for strength of schedule and still see that New England is probably a top 5-6 team in the NFL. And we see there have been worse representations from a team perspective in the Super Bowl historically, like way worse. Right. And that's where I stand, where I'm like, was the journey easier? Sure. Yeah. But like, what journey? Like, number one, they just played the schedule that they were given. So like, what are we, you can sit here and say that like, and hate on New England, but they did what they had to do and they got it done. And if you feel so strongly about it, go to DraftKings and put some money down on Seattle. You know, if you feel, I mean, I did, I took Seattle -4.5, but I'm not going to be surprised if New England puts up a game in the Super Bowl. Like, I don't think that they're that bad of a team the way that other people view them. If Seattle gets Sam Darnold though, playing the way that he did in the NFC Championship, they're gonna win that game. I mean, he was lights out in that game. Clint Kubiak called a great game. I mean, the Seattle defense played one of their worst games of the season against the Rams this past week, and Seattle still got that W. And so it's going to be tough for New England to get the win for sure. But I just don't think that they're an unworthy team to be, in the Super Bowl representing a weak AFC from 2026 or 2025 to 2026.
Yeah. It's as Titans fans will like attest, and also Jets fans, like seeing Vikings fans, any fan that had Darnold as their quarterback at one point. Yeah. Panthers. Like, good for Sam Darnold and good for Vrabel. Like Titans fans, they're not mad at Vrabel.
No, I think that the franchise that should feel like the fan base that should feel the most gutted right now has to be Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like it's not the Jets. Like the Jets just didn't have the infrastructure for Sam Darnold to grow up in. And like same with Carolina, whatever. Like it just wasn't there. Minnesota was really good last year. And then they decided to move on. And that could end up really haunting them. Like that could end up being a really, really big deal.
All right, so you've already kind of given your prediction for what's going to happen in the Super Bowl.
We'll have breakdowns though next week, as long as I'm out there in San Francisco.
All right, let's talk about some coaching moves, including one that just happened. Last hour. If you're watching this last hour, if you're listening to it, it's yesterday. But Browns hire Todd Monken.
Yeah,
this whole Brown situation has been hilarious. People dropping out, not wanting to coach this franchise that has a Pro Bowl quarterback. I don't understand it, but JJ, your thoughts?
Yeah, I see that. I hear you. My thoughts are, this is kind of out of left field. I thought it was going to be, Shieldhouse or maybe Jim Schwartz, one of those two. But I think Monken was like number 3 from an odds perspective to land that job. I just wasn't following that super closely because it's Cleveland, and I'll just react when it actually goes down. I can understand why they made the hire. I don't think that a team like that should necessarily go in this direction, but Todd Monken historically has been a tight end heavy kind of coach and offensive coordinator. I mean, we've seen that throughout his time at every single stop that he's made. And so you look at the personnel that Cleveland has and you're like, okay, you go from Stefanski, who also has been, I mean, Stefanski was ahead of the curve in the way that offenses are kind of operating right now with these heavy sets and a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of tight end use. And to me, it's like, well, then why'd you get rid of Stefanski in the first place? You know, like if you're going to go Stefanski to Monken, there are definitely differences. Don't get me wrong, but from like a personnel standpoint and just like Stefanski has the resume as well, etc. To me, if you're going to get rid of an established coach like that, I would likely just go with like a Shieldhouse or someone who's like just a complete unknown who could maybe, that high risk, high reward of, they could be horrible, but they also have that crazy ceiling of maybe it is an O'Connell or a McVay type coach where you feel good about them for the next like decade plus. Right. And so that's where I stand kind of on the Monken stuff. I think Monken's not a bad coach. A lot of people will probably trash him from that perspective because they weren't able to like get over the hump with Lamar, in the playoffs and stuff like that. But I don't think he's a bad coach. I don't think he's a bad offensive coach. So,
I
the
think it's
offense
fun fantasy football.
Fantasy football, I'm very excited for Harold Fannin. Like, I think it's a good hire for Harold Fannin in particular. And, it's not like I wasn't high on Fannin already. So it's exciting for him. And as you noted, they have a Pro Bowl quarterback. So we'll see, see what happens there. But there was a really funny tweet that I saw Ben Solak tweet out. He said, truly hilarious outcome from where Monken and the Browns were 6 years ago. And there's an article from Zach Jackson, who covers the Browns in The Athletic. And in that article, it says, quote, Monken would spend time on the field before games because Monken was coaching Cleveland before.
Yeah.
And it says Monken would spend time on the field before games, telling opposing coaches how bad things were with the Browns, calling the team a total mess. And so this was what, like 6 or 7 years ago. So
things can change.
Yeah, things can change. They clearly just wanted a different voice. I think a lot of these franchises and teams, like the Steelers, did the same thing where I think that we haven't talked about the Mike McCarthy hire. I'm assuming that was next, maybe.
So you'll see it's Brady and the 3Ms. The 3Ms are Minter, McCarthy, and Monken.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll go to Minter. I think Minter is a pretty smart choice. I mean, he has there's a lot of praise with him. And I think that Baltimore, as long as they hire the right kind of OC, can get back to where they need to be. I've said this many times before. Coaching hires, to me, if you're sitting on if you're in mom's basement or if you're sitting on the couch, like it's really hard to analyze these things. Like it's very vibes based and feel based. And so what I say about coaches is just a general, vibe and feel, but I don't think that it's necessarily like definitely going to go a certain direction because we just don't know what it's like on that team in that locker room and with that front office. The McCarthy thing though, there's an actual background with him. There isn't that with Minter as much, from like a head coaching standpoint. The McCarthy thing is the definition of the dude, of that old guy who opens up the present and it's the exact same shirt that he's wearing, like it's you're going from a defensive Mike Tomlin to an offensive Mike Tomlin with Mike McCarthy, hypothetically, right? I'll say this. The talk about him, like the narrative surrounding McCarthy right now is that he's this like quarterback guru and whisperer, right?
Yeah.
Like that the Steelers got him because he's an offensive mind. He is an offensive mind. So I'm from a Steelers perspective, it's smart to go in the offensive direction. Okay. So they got that right, in my opinion. They needed to do that. And then just hire a good defensive coordinator. You're good to go. But this idea that he's this quarterback whisperer, like maybe that's true. But if your evidence that you're pointing to is that like Aaron Rodgers was good under Mike McCarthy, he had Brett Favre, and then obviously Dak Prescott played a little bit better under Mike McCarthy. The Steelers don't have Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, and Brett. I know that there's a history in like the 90s and stuff too of him playing, coaching quarterbacks and such. But like at some point you got to be like, the game right now is nothing like the game back then. So I don't really want to go down this route and just give him the benefit of the doubt and just be like, yeah, man, he's a quarterback whisperer. If he was a quarterback whisperer, why didn't he have a job? Like if he's this like, that's the most important position in the game, if not all of sports. And if he's a whisperer for that position, you would think that more teams would be lining up to get Mike McCarthy. Now, with all that being said, I thought his presser was really touching, and it's cool to see a Yinzer.
I was about to say in the in the late round Discord, seemed like you were maybe warming up.
I'm all in after.
You might be warming up to him.
Yeah, no, I mean it's cool.
Talking about the parade starting at where he grew up on,
I like the Yinzer vibes and stuff. It's fun. Like the Steelers have done that. They drafted Kenny Pickett, which was a huge mistake. Obviously, the one time that they did this, where they like went with that local guy who, ended up working out. I mean, I guess like technically like a Joey Porter Jr. is working out right now, and he's from Pittsburgh. He actually went to the same high school that I went to. But James Conner is one that in recent memory that we can look at and be like, oh yeah, that was a cool story. And he actually did work out for the team, and the team then gave him the boot, and he's been just as good outside of Pittsburgh as he was in Pittsburgh. But I don't know, man. I mean, like, I think that this is my final say about the McCarthy hire. I think the hire actually does point to Mike Tomlin leaving himself as opposed to actually getting let go. Where there were rumors, like that's what the story says, but there were rumors that, no, they definitely had a mutual, no, I think the Steelers wanted to keep Mike Tomlin. And he was like, I can't do this anymore. I think all that stuff is now true based on the fact that like they went out, they got Mike McCarthy. He clearly wasn't just like their top choice that they had been thinking about all along. And I think that's the case for a lot of these teams where, the Browns get rid of Stefanski, they get Todd Monken. Is that really their top choice? Probably not. Is Buffalo with Joe Brady, who we haven't even touched on, was that their top choice? Probably not. I think that they're going through this interview process and teams are realizing that maybe these candidates aren't the best and they're hiring within, or they're at least considering strongly someone within or someone from complete left field. But the Joe Brady thing, I thought that was probably the worst hire of this cycle.
Yeah. Like why? You're just firing someone to have as a scapegoat when really he's not the one. If you're hiring just the offensive coordinator.
If the problem is that they can't get over the hump in the playoffs, then you're going and you're getting a guy who is part of that problem.
Yeah.
That's my issue. And Joe Brady, when he took over as offensive coordinator, they became much more run heavy. They leaned more on James Cook. And they have been a lot better in terms of like from like an EPA per play standpoint with Joe Brady than they were pre-Joe Brady. The issue is I don't know what kind of voice he had from like a personnel standpoint and such, but I know that now they've announced and they've talked about how they want him to be involved in all of those discussions. And hopefully that means that he gets some more of those guys on offense and at wide receiver. Otherwise, this offense running through a slot guy during an era where slot receivers aren't as important and vital is just not it. That's just not the way that you should be running an offense.
Greg Rosenthal said, if I'm Joe Brady, I'm absolutely trying to hire Sean McDermott as my DC. It's a good scheme fit with the players they have.
Yeah, that's exactly how. I mean, I just think, I said this from the start, I thought McDermott deserved one more year. Yeah. And to see if he could bring it together. There were some obvious injuries and / just poor team building going on with Buffalo. And I thought McDermott ended up towards the end of the season getting enough out of that defense, given the personnel as well. And so, they clearly wanted to move on. I just don't think that Joe Brady is necessarily the answer. But again, coaching stuff has a lot of volatility, a lot of variance. We're not in the locker room. We don't know how these guys motivate. Yeah. And it could turn out great. Who knows?
From Bill's drama to Bill drama in a second. But before that, we got some offensive coordinators that are worth mentioning. Tommy Rees to the Falcons, Bobby Slowick to the Dolphins. Remember, he was like the heartthrob candidate for Houston until they just tanked last year. And then Brian Daboll to the Titans. So those three hires have been made, and curious as to any thoughts you have regarding that.
My overall thought, I'm actually thinking more of, we already talked about like Mike McDaniel with, right. Although this says Giants up here, it should say Chargers, right? With Harbaugh and McDaniel.
Yeah.
We already talked about McDaniel. I think that's going to be amazing. Like I'm going to be so bullish on the Chargers offense next year. It's going to be ridiculous. So I'm very excited about that. I don't mind Brian Daboll. Actually, I thought that he might have even been a better candidate than like a Joe Brady for the Bills, just given what he was able, like he was.
Yeah. I thought they were going to hire him.
Yeah. He wasn't a bad, call for, or he wasn't a bad guy to help develop Josh Allen and such. But I will say, I think the Broncos are, they get rid of Lombardi. I think they're going to promote Davis Webb because Davis Webb's been such a hot commodity seemingly on the market. And so that's what I'm expecting over the next 24 hours or so. Seems like no one wants the Eagles job because they have that run game coordinator or something that wants to stay there and they want him to stay there. And so therefore the offensive coordinator wouldn't have as much control. That's what the rumor is out there. So we'll see. The Chiefs are really strange, just going back and forth from coordinator to coordinator and just going back to Eric Bieniemy. But I think that the upside with Bieniemy would be the potential for more down the field throws. We saw a little bit more of that this past year. Mahomes did have a higher ADOT, but I think he's a better fit for what they do than what Matt Nagy was doing beforehand. And then, Zach Robinson, I think is a pretty neutral kind of move for Tampa Bay overall.
Yeah. I think the Eagles situation, sometimes it's not about who they hire. It's like who they are not hiring, like who's not taking the job, who keeps on withdrawing their names. So will be interesting there. And before we move on, really quick, thoughts on Bill Belichick, JJ?
I just think that there's a lot of ego that goes on with voters and journalists, and it's just so tiring. Like you're not as special as you think you are. And the same thing goes with like general media access to certain, there's just a lot of like, oh, you can't do that. Like the stuff in Jacksonville after Liam Cohen, the Liam Cohen presser, where the one reporter basically like thanked him for having like a great season, and all these the only people that were truly mad about that were other reporters, know, and there's a lot of that goes on in that space, and no shade to the people who do that, because we need reporters to be able to get us the information that then we create content off of. And so I'm very appreciative of that. But look, man, you're just reporting stuff. Just like we're just talking fantasy football.
Like meteorologists are just trying to predict the weather.
Yeah, like we got to get the egos out of here. If someone has like a crazy ego as a reporter, as a meteorologist, whatever the case may be, and I think that's what's driving the Bill Belichick stuff and him not getting in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Get that out of here. It's so ridiculous. It's so dumb. We don't need that. Bill Belichick is a Hall of Fame head coach. Everyone with a brain knows that that's the case. And, if you're going to hurt him and that eligibility based on the cheating stuff and the scandals and whatnot, a lot of those scandals, and it's hard for me to even say because I grew up, because this is like peak when I was a peak fan.
Yeah.
A lot of those scandals are very overblown. Yeah. And it's just not, and I what I'm getting ready for, Kitchen, is Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to use this logic for Belichick, what kind of logic are you going to use for Tom Brady? And if Tom Brady is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, then officially close that freaking institution, because that is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And Bill Belichick, he talked about going to Canton. As someone who just went to Canton with you at the FF Expo, he has a reverence for the Hall of Fame. So he understood the implications of it when they let him know. And I think the pendulum will swing back, and he'll be in next year. And there will be people that, people don't really feel sorry for Bill Belichick, but now they're starting to. So maybe this will just give him a little more compassion.
Maybe it helps his image a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. All right.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more, or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Today's data.
All right, we're going to be talking way too wide receiver rankings in a second. So I'm going to do the same thing I did last week, where I looked at how players perform versus ADP expectation this past year. So every player at a certain ADP has an expected points per game output or value. That's just based on history. And so you can take that and then see how they actually performed and compare the two numbers. And then you can see which players outperform ADP expectation most and which players underperformed. The player who overperformed ADP expectation most this past year on a points per game basis was Quentin Johnston.
QJ.
Because his expectation was very, very low. It was only 5.4 PPR points per game because he was drafted way, way, way late. I almost you could almost argue that you shouldn't include players like that on these lists because it's just so easy for them to outperform expectation. But I still think, it does tell you that because he's not a league winner the same way Jackson Smith-Njigba was, obviously. But
no, but he helped teams. I mean, from where he was in the preseason, they draft Trey Harris. He was an afterthought, and he helped people.
By myself included. Yeah. I didn't have any QJ this year. Right. So I wasn't that upset whenever he started to trail off. I was very nervous the first few weeks of the season. But then he trailed off. But he outperformed expectation by 6.8 PPR points per game. Rashee Rice was next. Now, obviously, that was because he had a depressed ADP because of the suspension and stuff. So that's not really like a one-to-one comparison. But then JSN, Puka Nacua, Wan'Dale Robinson, George Pickens is up there, Chris Olave, Romeo Doubs, and Alec Pierce. So yeah, I think it captured a lot of the big winners at wide receiver this year. And then on the flip side, the worst pick you could have made from an ADP expectation standpoint was Brian Thomas, which I think that plays out too. Anyone who drafted BTJ, they're sitting there and they're like, yeah, they're nodding. They're like, yeah, that sucked. That was a terrible experience. Matthew Golden was next, Justin Jefferson, Xavier Worthy. This is all in relevant games, by the way. So I removed the final week of the season. Yeah. Adam Thielen, because we were drafting him when many thought that he was going to have a role on Carolina or in Carolina. Jerry Jeudy, Deontay Thornton. Remember Deontay Thornton had some hype and a little train going at the beginning of the season. Ladd McConkey, Cooper Kupp, and Darnell Mooney. Those were the worst wide receiver picks you could have made. Fortunately, some of those guys were avoids in the draft guide this year, but I did have Darnell Mooney as a dart throw and Matthew Golden as a target. Talked about Matthew Golden on the things I got wrong episode, but like I was lower on Xavier Worthy for a lot of the summer. Wasn't really high on Brian Thomas. Didn't mind Justin Jefferson, but no,
I love Justin Jefferson.
Common take. Hated Jerry Jeudy. So at least that one, right? Yeah. Yeah.
You convinced me not to draft Jerry Jeudy, but other than that, these names are going to bring up pain. Like, Justin Jefferson, whenever he had that little hamstring injury, I was just buying the dip on him and I just kept on drafting him. It's like, 1.7. Yes, please.
Yeah. I wish I would have leaned in more on some of my research with like the unknown quarterback stuff. And but someone's asking about Michael Wilson on here. He wasn't he didn't have an ADP. So he just isn't on this list. That's why he's not there. But yes, like from the perspective of, was Michael Wilson a better? Yes, he would probably be the 101 here, the top guy here of guys who outperform expectation. But someone's also asking, how do you factor value of draft spot? Like JJ was a first rounder, BTJ was a second round pick, value of round one much higher. Yes, the value of round one is a lot higher. You can see in the expected points column that Justin Jefferson had a 17.5 expected points per game. Brian Thomas was about a full point lower than that. It's all based on regression and historical value. So you just take different trends and curves and you get the formula for that. You can plug it in and say, okay, at this ADP, here's what's happened historically. Now there's going to be, if other people do this, because there are other analysts who do this kind of analysis, you can get differing numbers. This isn't like a one size fits all. Not only will ADP change from data set to data set, but the way that you calculate this can change. I will tell you this, that I am not using just a straight linear formula to create this, right? Because obviously a first round pick to a second round pick to a third, it's not a linear drop off in expected points from one pick to the next, but there's some smoothing that goes on to make sure that, the 101 isn't expected to score 25 PPR points per game. And then the second round guy is at like 15. So there's a little bit of math that's involved here, but based on their overall ADP, this is what their expected points is for each of these players.
Yeah, looking at some of these names, the Alec Pierce name, I was told this week there are some teams that are already speaking of way too early, is already drafting next year or for next year. Alec Pierce, do you know where he started going?
I haven't started drafting yet, but I'll guess he's a 6th or 7th round pick.
4th round.
4th.
Yeah, I think he's now down to 5th or 6th, but yeah. Crazy. He's gonna be a free agent.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that I'm gonna be researching this year about free agency and team movement and stuff like that. That's that'll be part of the draft guide more than likely. But like, he's an interesting name. He had a huge breakout year that I wasn't anticipating. And he looked pretty good, and a team's probably gonna pay him. So I could see the logic behind at least drafting him relatively high.
Yeah, he's gonna get paid. Yeah, he's going to get paid this offseason. And also, we don't know what's going to happen to Michael Pittman Jr. if he does stay. Pittman Jr. could could be on the move somewhere too. So will be a fun offseason, and trust me, we'll have tons of content around that. And JJ, I cannot wait for people to see these wide receiver rankings that you have just set in stone.
The late round main event.
All right, you know the rules. These are JJ's wide receiver rankings, and these will not change at all before the draft. So go ahead and just pencil them in.
I actually could see this list being more penciled in than any other list.
Yeah, pinned in, sharpied in.
Yeah.
It's pencil you can erase.
Yeah, pencil you can erase.
Yeah.
Number 1, I have Puka Nacua. I think that you could argue a couple of other guys at the top wide receiver spot, but he's now played 3 years in the league. He's had target shares of 28.7%, 29.9%, and 30.3%, which is absolutely insane. Good infrastructure. I'm assuming the Rams are going to run it back or try to run it back with what they have. The defense was, they'll improve the defense a little bit, but offensively, I think Stafford will stick around. Obviously, McVay, being the mind and the guru, if you will, that he is, will help the offense still sustain success. Puka Nacua has 2 of the 5 seasons since 2011 with a 3.5 or better yards per route run rate, and he's only played 3 years in the NFL. There's no other player that's done that twice. He's done it twice. He's done that twice in 3 seasons. It's crazy how good Puka Nacua has been. The one thing I'll say about Nacua, I think touchdown regression is probably going to hit Matthew Stafford at a career high 7.7% touchdown rate. Nacua, he had 10 touchdowns, but he had 6 end zone targets, which wasn't really anything out of the ordinary for him. So maybe a little bit of touchdown regression, but he's just too good to not have really high on your wide receiver list.
Yeah, I saw one mock draft that had the Rams taking a wide receiver in the first round, like Jordan Tyson, like someone like notable. If that happens, it will not be fair. But the Rams have 2 picks in the first round this year.
Falcons trade, right?
So via Atlanta. It was Daniel Jeremiah has Mekhi Lemon, the top receiver right now,
who looks good in the early lookings.
Yeah.
At the model. Yeah.
Going to the Rams. That would be sick. All right. Number 2, you've got Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I think this is just like a safe bet overall. I gotta clear this up. For some reason it's not showing. There we go. We good? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jamar Chase. He had 28% and 32% target shares over his last 2. The splits with and without Joe Burrow weren't like that dramatic this past year. He had 19.1 PPR points without Burrow and 19.6 with Burrow. So he did see an uptick in production with Joe Burrow. The one thing I'll say, though, is that with Joe Flacco, Jamar Chase had such unsustainable target shares. Like I'm talking 50. He had like a 60% target share one week, which is just not sustainable across the season. So I think that's boosting that 19.1 number up a little bit. The fact is, with Joe Burrow, he was at 19.6 PPR points per game, which is a really good number. Cincinnati, they're another team that's going to largely just run it back this year. They've fallen below 0 in pass rate over expected only one time with Joe Burrow. And since 2020 with Zach Taylor, but with both of them. So since 2020, and it was minus 0.33 was their pass rate over expected. So they're a team with a very good bet to have a lot of passing volume. And Jamar Chase is one of the best wide receivers in the game.
All right. Number 3, you've got JSN.
Yes. So next on the list is JSN, and you're introducing it before you're clearing the black on here. So I'm scrambling to clear it so I can see my notes on these players.
I think there's a little bit of delay because I'm doing it and then it's taking a little bit for it to update for you.
It's just all the ice over there in Nashville.
Yes.
So yeah, JSN's next. I think genuinely you could at least make the argument that you can interchange any of these 3 guys as the wide receiver 1. JSN proved this year that he's a do-it-all wide receiver. He was arguably the best deep ball wide receiver in football this season, which says a lot, obviously, because that's not how he was deployed at all to start his NFL career. He led the NFL in 20-plus air yard yards by over 100. He had 3.62 yards per route run, so he's one of those 5 that I talked about since 2011 to get over that 3.5 mark. The downside for JSN, is he going to be able to repeat these insane numbers that he posted this year in terms of deep ball rate, all that kind of stuff? You would assume that Seattle is going to probably still be somewhat of a run-heavy team. I don't think they're going to be at minus 6.8 pass rate over expected like they were last year, because that generally will regress a little bit. And then the wild card here is Clint Kubiak. He's looking like he's, what would you say, the Raiders head coach probably? Like, it looks like that's a very real possibility. If Kubiak is gone, that's at least some more volatility to JSN's profile. I mean, JSN's good enough that he's going to overcome, but that's why I have him 3 instead of 1 or 2, is because there is some instability with that offensive environment.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more, or visit tremfyaradio.com.
All right. Number 4, JJ, we continue with the hyphen gang with Amon-Ra St. Brown.
We've now seen ARSB do this with like multiple coordinators, multiple, different offenses and a little bit of different styles. He just gets it done. He's had at least a 27% target share in each of his last 4 seasons. He's only missed 2 games. He's a dog. I mean, there was a time this year we thought he was going to miss like 4 games. He didn't miss a beat, right? And so Amon-Ra is pretty interesting from that perspective, that he's got that stability. 2.48 yards per route run last year was really good, but it wasn't like an outlier season for him by any means. Overall, I just think that he's a safe option. I do have some fear that Drew Petzing is going to be pretty run heavy because he has been outside of last year in Arizona, and that could hurt volume a little bit. But Amon-Ra St. Brown's a stud. He's a stud.
Okay. Number 5, JJ. We have someone who was the 3rd overall pick last year. This year, it's CeeDee Lamb, number 5.
Yeah. So look, he did see, like, if you want to just be like, have like a guide of how George Pickens impacted CeeDee Lamb, I'd say that he had like a 3 to 4 percentage point dip in like target share and in a lot of those like market share related metrics. He also had the worst yards per route run of his entire career. And you can see this chart from last year's draft guide that shows that top 18 wide receivers, early round wide receivers who had N-1 seasons of yards per route run below 2, they hit and exceed ADP expectation at a much lower rate than the guys who had over a 2.6 yards per route run rate, for instance, right? So, or even, 2 to 2.3 or 2.3 to 2.6. So essentially, guys who had poor yards per route run seasons the previous season that are then drafted in the early rounds, they do worse against ADP and versus ADP than the alternative. With that being said, there's a good environment. Dak Prescott's obviously a plus. Schottenheimer has called really pass-heavy offenses since he's been in Dallas. They haven't had less than 600 pass attempts in each of their last 3. Only once since 2019 did they get below 600 pass attempts. I could, though, in the end, consider not getting CeeDee Lamb here. And, like, I think you're going to look at these rankings and you're going to see, like, this grouping of, like, oh, man, CeeDee Lamb's only 2 spots away from Jackson Smith and Jigba. I guarantee you ADP is going to be those big 3 wide receivers, maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then a cluster in, like, the late second round. Like, there's going to be a lot of running backs and even, like,
lots of running backs this year
sprinkled in there, So don't think that CeeDee Lamb is like a top 6 pick. It's just that wide receiver gets flatter, and CeeDee Lamb we know has that ceiling, but he is part of that group of that like non-elite tier right now. He can get there because we know he's talented enough, but I think based on all the evidence we have, we don't want to just like assume that. Now George Pickens could be gone next year. Could happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but if it does, then CeeDee Lamb would probably jump up ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown for me.
With the past 2 years and the wide receiver stuff, it will be interesting to see how the ADP shakes out. Let's get to number 6. I was a little bit surprised by this, but then I got thinking about it. I was like, okay, that makes sense. It's Drake London.
Dude, Drake London balled out last year.
Yeah.
It's obviously he got hurt, and so people are like, "Oh, I hate Drake London because I drafted him high, and then he got hurt, and he didn't help me as much as he should have in the playoffs and stuff." But pre-injury, Drake London was literally a league-winning player. He was great. He was the wide receiver 3 by points per game, 19.7 PPR points per game through week 11 before that injury. Like he was great. Kevin Stefanski. He can be run heavy, probably will be pretty run heavy. But we've also seen him favor those heavy tight end sets. And Drake London is not part of, if you go back to the Death of the Wide Receiver 2 episode, Drake London's not one of those wide receivers that will lose work to a tight end, in the middle of the field or in those low 8-out looks, because he's a dominant elite receiver. And so I feel confident if you can go back to his early years when he first entered the league, he had crazy market share numbers, largely because Atlanta was running a lot of heavy sets, not a lot of 11 personnel. And so he was competing with other tight ends instead of wide receivers. And so he was able, even in a run heavy offense, to see a decent amount of volume, given his status as a younger player, a decent amount of volume because he had like a 30% target share. And so I think we could just see that kind of happen again in a more efficient offense. He's just a stud, under a 29% target share only once in his 4 seasons, yards per out run rate over 2, which is a great number in 3 of 4 seasons. He's a very good player, and I want very good players on my fantasy team.
That makes sense to me. That checks out. All right. Number 7, you got Rashee Rice.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about this, to be honest with you, but it's one of those things where like I'm trying to not overthink this, right? Like this is a very basic math problem with Rashee Rice.
There are some variables, involved here.
Sure. There could be, Patrick Mahomes is injured, so maybe he's not 100% when he comes back. Maybe they add to that wide receiver room, but I think there's a chance that Travis Kelce is done, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't play anymore. That would really help Rice. He's had 16 plus and 18 plus points per game over his last 2. And, I do think that like Matt, I said this earlier with Eric Bieniemy, but like Matt Nagy being gone, maybe that means more downfield throwing and maybe that helps Xavier Worthy a little bit more than Rashee Rice and all that. And I do think that Rice is sort of like an incomplete wide receiver in general, but they just know how to scheme him and they know how to get him fantasy production. And so I'm going to be okay with that. I don't like buying into situations so much. And I feel like you kind of have to do that with Rashee Rice, but it's not like he's a bad player. It's not like we're just buying only into situations. It's just that when you're amongst other really, really talented wide receivers, it's a little bit harder to pull the trigger.
Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why it's way too early is because we don't know about like legal issues or suspension issues with Rice this offseason. So one of the reasons, like one of the main issues that could affect his ranking again after last season as well. All right. Nico Collins comes in at number 8.
Honestly, I am so tired of people saying that Nico Collins was a bad draft selection this past year. He wasn't. He was not He wasn't amazing. He didn't like far outperform expectation, but you could have made way worse picks than Nico Collins in fantasy football. And he was honestly very good. He had a 2.35 yards per out run, which was the worst of his last 3 seasons, which is crazy because anything over 2 is generally considered a good season in yards per out run. His worst over his last 3 has been 2.35. That's how good and efficient Nico Collins has been. He had very similar red zone and end zone looks this past year. He's been top 10 in PPR points per game in each of the last 3 seasons. So at wide receiver. So I think Collins is a safe bet. We could see some changes at the wide receiver position and hopefully a better offensive line, which would go a really long way for Houston. I don't think that the offensive line can get much worse than it's been over the last 2 years. So,
and hopefully Stroud is not seeing ghosts either.
I think that Collins is going to start to become sort of like that unsexy pick because people just, it's a name that we're drafting high this year and, we're just going to do it over and over again and just not feel like it's like this new up and comer. But I think he's solid. It's no different than like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like he's just very, very, they're different players, completely different players. But like in terms of like the mentality of getting someone who's just a solid asset, that's fine to do. when you're talking 16 plus PPR points.
Okay, these next two, I'm ready to get hurt again. I'm just going to say that right now. Starting with number 9, Justin Jefferson.
I mean, I don't know what to say about Justin Jefferson, if I'm being honest with you. Like, in a vacuum, his 1.88 yards per route run last year was not bad whatsoever. But it is a little bit more, like I said, with CeeDee Lamb, a little bit more questionable for a top 18 wide receiver. It's just such an outlier season this past year for Justin Jefferson.
Because
right?
we've seen his ceiling. We know that he is like one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver that there is. And so to see him perform like he did,
I'm sure I'm going to uncover some data where I make the argument this summer. This is me projecting of trying to see what my future is going to be, where I'm saying it can't be much worse than what Minnesota had at quarterback. And generally teams that have that poor quarterback play will see an uptick the following season. That's my guess of what the pro Justin Jefferson argument will be. I just haven't researched all of that. But yeah, look, it's Justin Jefferson. Like, he's the fact that a 1.88 yards per route run rate is like bad for him is crazy. It's similar. I mean, Nico Collins has the same problem, but Justin Jefferson has proven a higher ceiling than Nico Collins. So I think Justin Jefferson should be a top 10 wide receiver next year.
And if you're Kevin O'Connell, you're thinking, how do we get this guy some touch? Like, 2 straight seasons of bad passing game is going to be really tough for him. So that's one of the reasons. And then number 10, I appreciate the IHOP commercials that he's done. It's Malik Nabers.
Yeah, this depends entirely on the recovery. But again, he was still over that 2 mark in yards per route run before he went down. He was trending towards like a top 10 season at wide receiver. And now we feel better about the quarterback situation. Like, we feel good about sophomore Jackson Dart. We don't know who the OC is at this point because it was like looking like it was going to be Todd Monken, but it's clearly not going to be. But obviously a healthy Malik Nabers is a very good fantasy asset. In my opinion, if he were completely healthy, if we didn't have any questions, probably wide receiver like 6 on this list. Like, you can argue him around like where Drake London or even like a CeeDee Lamb, hypothetically. Like, I think that there's that grouping of like guys who we're going to feel pretty strong about. They have more of a backbone. I think the difference between like the top 10 this year and like the top 12 to 15 last year, where we were like, where most people felt pretty good about those wide receivers, is that a lot of those wide receivers didn't have like year after year backbones of good production. I think at least this year we feel like we have that. Like, CeeDee Lamb has it, Drake London has it, Nico Collins has it. Rashee Rice kind of has it. Obviously Justin Jefferson does. And so I do think we're going to get a little bit better stability out of that top group. But of course there's reasons why we won't, that I talked about on that episode. I think 1075.
One name to keep in mind, Davis Webb.
Yeah.
He's been linked as a possible.
I just think he's going to get promoted is my guess.
Yeah, he could. But like you said, they thought Monken might be the guy. Now Shieldhouse, like, you've got all sorts of options, and it is
my general vibe is that I think that the Cardinals have been linked to Mike LaFleur, right? And so if he ends up going to Arizona, I think then Shieldhouse will get promoted in LA to an OC job.
Yeah.
And then they get a year with him, and then he's going to be a hot commodity next year. That's my guess as to how that
makes
goes.
Sense.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm saying this on Wednesday, January 28th. I could be totally
way too
wrong.
early, JJ, for you to be saying that.
Yeah. Apparently. Yeah.
That's what I have to say. All right, JJ, I do have next year's Super Bowl odds pulled up.
Oh, okay.
Can you guess who the top 2 options are right now?
I'm going to guess the Rams.
Yeah.
I guess I'll say the Seahawks.
Yeah, those are the top 2 right now.
Are they?
In the same division, but yeah. Seahawks and Rams plus 950. Bills.
Okay. Makes sense. Where's
overall.
Baltimore? Baltimore's kind of intriguing to me.
Baltimore is 14-1. Patriots 12-1. Eagles.
I'm assuming a lot of these odds are just really tight. Like there's not there probably aren't many standing out
up until like the 16-1 the Niners, and then past that it's like Bears 22-1, Pittsburgh 60-1.
Hey.
You know, like there's some Titans 110. I might just bet that right now.
The best bet I ever made. This was years ago. It was when the Saints came out of nowhere and they went to it was the year that they lost to the Rams in the NFC Championship on that questionable call, right?
Yeah.
And I had the Saints at 66-1 that year.
Wow.
Because no one wanted anything to do with them.
Yeah.
Going to, but when you compare an elite quarterback, because Drew Brees, like he was going to be playing for them. When you compare an elite quarterback with those low odds, you should always jump on it. That's my betting advice for you. My very amateur, definitely don't take that to the bank betting advice.
So someone we got to know over the past few years was the Landry family.
Yeah.
And Harold Landry was an outside linebacker for the Titans and just crushed it, and then got older, and then he went to New England last year. And I remember seeing the news and just feeling like, dang, sucks for him. Like, but at least he's going there just to ride the sunset of his career.
Yeah.
At least he gets to keep playing. And now they're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, that's
the NFL. I mean, this is the first time, isn't this the first time in either years or ever, one of the two, where the Super Bowl matchup is from two teams that didn't make the playoffs the previous year.
Yeah.
It's fun. This is what
give me more chaos next year.
I know that it's not a two teams that like haven't been there in recent memory, because obviously the Seahawks had their time with Russ and the Patriots.
Seahawks and the Patriots. Yeah.
And they played each other. Right.
Yeah.
And so like I get all of that and I get that sentiment, but try to, as a fan, detach yourself from that history and just look at what's gone on this year, and you can really appreciate what both teams did. And because of that, it's a lot easier to be like excited and happy for what the players and coaches on those teams were able to accomplish, because it's crazy what the Seahawks did and how they rebuilt that team, and how, I mean, I feel really bad for Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett literally got there right after they were in the Super Bowl and left right before they did this. And then there's obviously the trade with DK Metcalf, which is kind of hilarious that, they lose him and then they go to the Super Bowl. But like taking a chance on Sam Darnold, Mike McDonald and his defensive mind, like it's a really, really good story. And then obviously what's gone on with New England, with Drake May and how Vrabel's gotten that defense to play as well as it has. I want people to walk away from this episode knowing that I truly think that both teams deserve a lot of props. And because of that, you should do your best to enjoy that game.
Yeah, for sure. All right. We mentioned it earlier, but make sure you are signed up for the newsletter at Late Round. I'll be sending one out on Friday. If you want to join in on the fun, join the Patreon. You can find that link to lateround.com as well. And then if you are just bored and you haven't listened already, JJ has some things he got right this week. And then he also has the mailbag coming out on Friday. So did I miss anything, JJ?
I might have an email blast tomorrow. There's a possibility we might be.
This is breaking news to me.
Cooking something up over the last 12 hours. Once I get into something, I can't stop, and I've just been thinking about it. So I need to get it out there.
It's good. It's good with all the stuff we've got going on. It's good that you add an email to the play, as an outlet to get that out of. Okay. So on behalf of JJ, I'm Kitchen. We'll see you next time. Hopefully from Super Bowl LX in California. Talk to you later. Peace.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.